Hello friends and my dear students. Today we will deal with a very simple and a very important concept of organic chemistry, that is saturated and unsaturated compounds. Now what do you mean by saturated? Now before going to the basic what is about the compound and what is saturated and unsaturated, we'll learn simple meaning of saturated and unsaturated. What comes in our mind when we think about saturated, or what is something that is unsaturated? So what happens, now suppose we take a glass of water, and in the glass of water we are going on adding a spoon of sugar. We add a spoon of sugar and we stir it. What happens? After some times it dissolves. The sugar is invisible. Then again we take a spoon of sugar, we add in the glass. We again stir it. The sugar disappears. Means the sugar has been dissolved in the water. Then further when we go on adding one by one spoon of sugar and stirring it, what happens? A time comes when there is no further dissolution of sugar in water. Now after stirring, the sugar still appears. That is the point, we say, the point at which the further dissolution of sugar in water stops. That point we say the water is now saturated. It is saturation point. So such a solution in which there is no further dissolution of sugar is called a saturated solution. In terms of solution we say it is saturated. And before that, when the sugar was going on dissolving in that solution, at such instant those solutions were unsaturated solutions. Now if we take some other example, suppose I take your class of organic chemistry. I teach you for 1 hour. You will be comfortable. If I teach for 1 hour and 30 minutes, you will be comfortable. But if someone puts in your class and continuous organic chemistry goes for 5 hours, 6 hours, what will happen? At certain instant of time, you will say, no, not at all, no more. What happens? Now the mind is saturated. We can't put further, nothing can be added in our brain. So that is the saturated. Now after a break of 1 hour we can further learn, but at that instant it is saturated. Means saturated means something to which nothing more can be added. That is saturated. So in terms of compounds, when we say what is saturated, now if we say any element, suppose we are taking nitrogen. We know nitrogen has a valency of 3. It can form 3 bonds to complete its octet. We say carbon. Carbon can form 4 bonds to form its octet. So any element according to its valency, to satisfy its valency, when forms all the sigma bonds. Any element to satisfy all its valency when forms only sigma bond, such a compound formed is called a saturated compound. For example, if you go for nitrogen, if nitrogen forms all single bonds, we say it is saturated. But if nitrogen somewhere forms double bond with any element, it will be called as unsaturated. Suppose nitrogen has 3 valency, it forms a double bond with any element, let it be carbon. So we say this is a carbon-nitrogen unsaturated bond. Saturation simply means there must be all sigma bonds. As soon as a pi bond appears in the compound becomes unsaturated. So if we say carbon, if carbon makes all the sigma bonds, this is saturated compound. Now if a carbon makes 2 single bond, means 2 sigma bond and a double bond. Double bond means a sigma bond and a pi bond. Then this compound will be unsaturated. So as far as there is no double bond or triple bond, or we say pi bond in a compound, the compound is said to be saturated. For example, suppose we take CH4, is the simplest organic compound which is saturated. Now if we say simplest organic compound which becomes unsaturated, what can we go for? We have to take carbon. Now if we take 1 carbon to form double bond, it must require some other compound, atom. So if we say simplest, it can be carbon and all other valencies to be fulfilled by hydrogen. We can form alkyne, there will be triple bond. This is unsaturated compound. Now if we make cyclopropane, now if we say it is cyclic, Molecular formula when we say of cyclopropane, and if we say this compound CH3CH double bond CH2, both these compounds are having same molecular formula. This is C3H6, this one is also C3H6, but there is a very big difference between these two compounds. In this compound, all the bonds are single bond, there is no pi bond, so this is a saturated compound. Whereas this compound, there we can see a pi bond, so this is a unsaturated compound. So for unsaturation, it is important there should be some multiple bond in the compound, there should be presence of pi bond. Now unsaturation basically which we come across in organic chemistry means it may be carbon-carbon unsaturation, double bond or triple bond, it can be carbon-oxygen unsaturation, it can be carbon-nitrogen unsaturation. Any sort of pi bond if present, then we can say the compound is unsaturated. Cyclic compounds can also be unsaturated. Suppose we are taking a 3-membered ring. This is saturated because there is no pi bond. As soon as we put a pi bond, it now becomes unsaturated. So saturated compounds may be cyclic or open chain. Unsaturated compounds may be cyclic or acyclic. It doesn't matter. What is important is if all the atoms in a compound form only sigma bond, no pi bond, it is saturated. If a pi bond appears, double or triple bond appears, it is unsaturated. In the other way we can say, when in a compound, an atom, a molecule, any atom in the molecule do not have tendency to form further bond. Do not have tendency to form further bond, then it is said to be saturated. And if further bonds can be formed by breaking of pi bonds, then the compound is unsaturated. Now one very important thing regarding saturated, unsaturated, in which students often get confused is what? Sometimes the question is asked which among the following is saturated compound. On the other hand, sometimes it is asked which among the following is saturated hydrocarbon. So what is the basic difference between saturated compound and saturated hydrocarbon? When the term is used hydrocarbon, hydrocarbon means simply a compound which consists of only carbon and hydrogen, no other element. So when it is asked which is saturated hydrocarbon, means compound must contain only carbon and hydrogen. Suppose this is a saturated hydrocarbon. This one is a saturated compound, but it is not a hydrocarbon because here there is no carbon. So this is saturated. This is saturated compound, but it is not a saturated hydrocarbon. This is a saturated hydrocarbon. Now suppose if we take this compound, this is again a saturated hydrocarbon because there is no unsaturation and consists of carbon and hydrogen. Now suppose we are having a compound like this. This compound is saturated because it does not have any double or triple bond, it does not have any pi bond, but it is not a hydrocarbon. So we can't include this in a category of saturated hydrocarbon. It is a saturated compound, but it is not a saturated hydrocarbon. Now suppose here, this compound, if we place the remaining valencies with hydrogen, this is a hydrocarbon and this is a unsaturated hydrocarbon. We are saying it is hydrocarbon because here there is only carbon and hydrogen. Here if we place hydrogen atoms, this is also unsaturated hydrocarbon. These compounds, suppose this we place like this, CH3, CH3, CO. Now this compound is unsaturated, but this is not a hydrocarbon. We can call it unsaturated compound, but we cannot call it unsaturated hydrocarbon. Similarly, if here we place, it is that CH3CHNH. This is again unsaturated compound, but this is not a unsaturated hydrocarbon. So while doing the questions, while solving the questions, we must be very careful about what is asked. Whether it is only, we don't have to only see saturated or unsaturated. We have to read the question very carefully. It is what it is asked. It is saturated compound or saturated hydrocarbon. As soon as we see the word hydrocarbon, we must be very much sure the compound must consist of only carbon and hydrogen. And if there is any other element other than carbon, hydrogen, definitely it may be organic compound, but it will not be a hydrocarbon. Now, depending on the presence and absence of pi bond, means double or triple bond, we can say it is saturated or unsaturated. I hope your confusion about the saturated, unsaturated compound, saturated hydrocarbon, unsaturated hydrocarbon will be solved. You can solve the questions and see whether how much you can do correct regarding this topic.